There's Jeanette.
Okay, we are live on YouTube now. You're free to go whenever.
Okay, great, thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is a little new for all of us, so we'll just kind of get through this. This is a special called meeting of the Graham Historical Museum Advisory Board on September 14th, 2020 via Zoom teleconferencing. We're going to do the attendance, and for the record, I will ask each board member to give a verbal reply of present when your name is called. Board Secretary Nikki Smith, if you will please record the attendance for the meeting minutes, I would appreciate that. I'm Elaine Murren, present. April Snell. Is everybody unmuted?
Present.
Okay, Nikki Smith. Karen, Nikki, are you on? Yeah, Nikki, are you unmuted? That's fine, we see you.
Now.
Okay, good. Okay, Karen Chin.
Present.
Jeanette Beaudry.
Right. I'm here.
Jennifer Brito.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yes, now I can.
I'm here.
Present.
Present.
Okay. And Chuck Talley.
Present.
All right, good. Thank you all very much. This meeting is open to the public, and anyone wishing to speak will be recognized during the agenda topic listed as items not on the agenda, which will come at the end of the meeting. So I guess I don't have to tell all of you that normally we would be sitting around the big conference table upstairs in the museum. But the magic of technology and COVID, we are doing a teleconferencing here. So I would like to extend a virtual welcome to our two new board members, Chuck Talley, Jennifer Brito, and welcome back Jeanette Beaudry, who was reappointed in August. So welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. Old business, we don't really have any old business. I looked at the past minutes, which I'm hoping you all did as well, and there was nothing really to carry over. However, I'll just make a note that one thing we did discuss in February at the February meeting that are in the minutes, we're still looking to build the museum library, and therefore I've given a list of publications to Brian, and he will be ordering those as he can. So that is really the only thing that kind of carried over. So does anybody have anything else to add to the old business? Okay. Okay, so we're going to go, speaking of the minutes, has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes? Yes?
Yes.
Are there any changes, additions, corrections? All right. Yes, no? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it. Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you all very much. The minutes are approved as written. Okay, so we kind of welcomed the new advisory board members, but what I would like to do at this moment is just take a second and thank Diana and Jerry Cummings, who are our outgoing board members. They were here from the very beginning of pretty much from the beginning of the redesign, which meant that they got their hands dirty frequently. So Jerry Cummings is very instrumental, and his contributions to the military exhibit that we have are the expansion of that exhibit is in large part due to his contributions of artifacts. So we're very grateful for that. And Diana, who served as secretary for a while, did a great job in pulling together the Friends of the Museum Committee. So those two people I would personally like to thank. They helped out in more ways than you can possibly imagine. And I know you wish them all well. They're in their new house and hanging out with the granddaughters and helping them through the whole homeschooling business. So I wanted to get on the record as thanking them, all of us. The new business, Jeff, do you have Jason Moore standing by?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Graham Fire Department has requested the use of the 1930 Seagrace fire truck. It sits in the museum on display, you know, that big red truck. And they would like to drive it in the 2020 Christmas, downtown Christmas parade. So Captain Moore is on the line with us, and he's going to give some details of how that's going to work. And we can discuss it, and then we will vote on that. So Captain Moore?
Yes, hello. Can everybody hear me?
You bet.
First off, I just want to say thank you to everyone for having me on. This original idea was kind of talked about within the firehouse, but once we had got to the museum and got eyes on the truck, we were very enthusiastic and we're looking to, I guess you could say, bring it back to life and put it back into the parade. So what does that look like? We would definitely need to remove it from the museum at least 2 weeks prior to a parade timeline. That way that we could go through the engine to make sure everything is set up and it running appropriately for the parade. And then we would then utilize it at the parade and then get it back within a 2-week period so that we can prep it to go back to the museum so that it's ready to be put back. So we're looking at a 2-week before and then 2-week after for the parade.
Okay, Jeff, I'm sorry, Jason, I have a question.
Yes.
Once it goes down the parade route and comes back around, would it be possible to park it in front of the museum for at least until 2 or 3 o'clock? The museum will be open that day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so I'm wondering if we can, once again, shamelessly promote the museum by having the fire truck on the outside at the end of the parade. And then you guys can take it to the garage. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. What was your time frame again?
It's 10 to 2.
Yeah, so definitely, I think that's a great idea. That also gives us an opportunity to have actually a few of our guys and girls there that could, kind of promote the fire truck and the museum, as well as kind of see the citizens, talk about maybe a little bit of fire prevention, things like that. It's actually a great idea and a good opportunity for everyone to take photos and see the truck and then meet with some of the firefighters.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great. Does anybody have any questions for Captain Moore? Okay. At this point, then, I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve the use of the 1930 Seagrace fire truck for the 2020 Downtown Christmas Parade. Do I have a motion?
Oh, well, I'll make a motion to use the fire truck and also use the fire truck for afterwards. As long as there's, I know it'll be safety with having the fire people there to kind of keep small climbers off of it. So motion.
Yes, that would be excellent point, Karen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. Thanks, April. All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody? Aye. Chuck?
Yes,
Okay.
fine.
Great. It's unanimously approved, and thank you all very much. And thank you, Jason. We can talk about, how this is going to work and the logistics as it gets closer, if that's okay. He's muted, so he probably can't hear. Okay.
I just want to say,
Oh, yeah.
sorry, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to it.
Perfect, as do we. Thank you, Jason.
Mm.
Okay, moving on. Is there anything before we move on? Okay. The next thing will be our new project. Oh, yes.
I'll interrupt on that. Having the truck out 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after, I don't think you could ask for having commanded a truck company. I don't think that you could ask for any better way to have it maintained, serviced, both before and after. So I think this is a really good opportunity to maintain that piece of equipment in working order and by people who know what they're doing. So.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, and we're going to make sure they dust it before they bring it back in. They could use a little dusting right now. Yeah, thanks, Karen. That's a great idea. Okay, on to the next thing, which is our new project, the Wyatt Outlaw project. And Jeff, if I could get you to screenshot that first, the first text.
Is that the WOA project?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Stand by just a second.
sure. While he's doing that, I'm just going to give a quick intro to this, just because I want to say that for those of you who are around in the early days when we first started this, we saw immediately that there was a gap in our collection. We had no artifacts, memorabilia, photos, anything representing the African-American community in Graham. And then as people came on, so many of you do know that we have been talking about this for the last 3 years. And we've been trying to acquire items, photos to exhibit in the museum to more accurately reflect the African-American community's contribution to the history of Graham. But we have not been successful doing this. And so I have had, as I'm sure some of you have, had people ask me, well, don't you have anything about Wyatt Outlaw, or why, more specifically, why don't you? I've had no answer. I kind of do now. About a year ago, I met Julia Pelosi, by the way, no relation to Nancy. She is the founder and director of a consulting group called Eyeline HQ. And Julia and I have talked a lot about the museum over the past year, just odds and ends and things like this. And I have been talking to her and then about the museum and its collection, the good and the bad and the missing. And she came up with a brilliant idea one day that she pitched to me. And I thought, this is just too good to pass up. So I wanted to share it with all of you. And it is a juried art contest open to Black artists who would interpret the life of Wyatt Outlaw and his many contributions. Who be awarded a mission to create a piece for permanent display at the Historical Museum. He and I have designed the various components of the project. We've determined what it would take to make it work. We've carefully considered the impact such a project would have on the Historical Museum, the city of Graham, and the African-American community in general. It's a project that combines culture and art and history, and it offers the Black artist an opportunity to tell the Wyatt Outlaw story from a unique perspective, a rather personal perspective, actually. And it does coincide with the 200th anniversary of his birth, which I thought was quite remarkable and very poignant at this moment. The Museum Advisory Board will play an important role in making this project a success. And I'm quite confident, it is my opinion actually, that your efforts will be an enormous contribution and something that we can all look back on with pride. So this is what I have Julie and I have come up with. As you all know, I put a copy of the proposal in the agenda packet, so we won't take time to go over it step by step. If you read the proposal, I hope you'll see that it's a great opportunity. It's quite an extraordinary opportunity. So on the screen, what you're seeing now are several important points to consider as you deliberate on this project. And we're going to open this up to a Q&A. Julia's on the line. Hey, Julia.
Hello.
And she's going to be, well, we can't see her. She's going to be answering any questions that you have. I can certainly answer questions. And after we have discussed this and you've come to learn as much as you want to know about it, excuse me, we will make a motion and then subsequently vote. So Julia, I will introduce you first and you can address the group and then we can open it up to the Q&A and discussion, okay? That's all right with everybody. You're on, girl.
Okay. Hold on, is my camera working?
It is now, yes, hi.
Okay. I can't keep it on for very long because all day long my Zoom has been very glitchy when I run both audio and video. But I did want to at least say a visual hello to everyone. And then if that's okay, I'll switch back to, to the icon.
Whatever
Otherwise,
keeps you on.
I've been booted out of a couple Zoom meetings because of that overload. And also the audio gets really glitchy, mine and the incoming. I don't really have prepared intro remarks. Elaine, do you want to first go over what you have on the screen and then I can
Sure.
get questions?
Yeah, yes.
Mhm.
Are all of you, can you all of you see this on the screen? I don't know that it's necessary that we read it all together like we're in the third grade, but on the other hand, there are two important components that are listed here on the screen. And in large part, these were extrapolated from an alternate proposal or suggestion from Karen Chin. And Karen, thank you for submitting that. It certainly gave us an idea of what the concerns might be. You know, you throw stuff out there and you assume everybody's going to love it, but everybody always has a different take on things. But I hope you've been able to answer the questions that you brought up in your alternate proposal, because you did send this out to the group, which is great. Thank you for that. And so what Julia and I have tried to do is go back and look at your concerns, and we have answered accordingly. And that's what you see on this page. So one of the things that I think you had an issue with was as you say, the inappropriateness of having an outside non-Graham resident consultant provide guidance for the locality history. First of all, this will be completely driven by GHM, Graham Historical Museum. Julia and her company, they're quite extraordinary, actually, and I hope you all had a chance to read the bios of Eyeline, because this is not, while they don't reside right here in Graham, they're an extraordinary company. And I work with Julia on another, another project, but this is not nickel and dime stuff. While we are getting the bargain basement price, a deep discount, but still it's going to be very quality work. However, the museum and the advisory board will be completely in charge of everything that happens. So if you want to read along, and if anybody looks at what is on the screen, and then feel free to ask, a question. The other thing had to do with the finances of how this was going to be funded. Well, I think that was answered pretty specifically in the proposal, is that it will be funded by public corporate donations funding, and that will be both local and national. This is a national contest. So while, as I mentioned in my response email to you, Karen, and to the group, I value our local folks a lot. But I think for something like this, for what we're going after, and for the exposure we're looking for, and for the quality that will add to our collection, I think this is an excellent, excellent opportunity to do that. And there are so many side benefits that, that will come from doing something like this, that gives visibility to the museum and perhaps motivates other folks to come forward with other artifacts, stories, anything we can use that better reflects the Black community in Graham, and certainly how it impacted Graham's history. We are a historical museum. That's what we're here to do, is make sure that we have a complete and representation as much as we can, and to make every effort to make our collection complete. So let's see, what else is on here? Does anybody have any comments based on what you're seeing now?
I have a question.
Yes, of course.
I love that. I think it's amazing. I just have one question. Is
Sure.
how are we going to determine if somebody qualifies to enter as an African American?
Well, That's an excellent question, Jenny. Thank you. I have no idea. I mean, they can send a photograph, but what they're going to be doing is sending a proposal and a sketch of their vision of their piece. And by the way, it's across all mediums. It's not just a painting. It can be a sculpture. It can be a tapestry. It can be anything, because there are no, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, there are no physical representation of Wyatt Outlaw. There are no photos. There is nothing. So the beauty of this is that African-American artists get to interpret the story, and they will certainly be given links for research. But in terms of how do we know they're African-American when they submit their stuff, I would say let's assume they're honest people, and this is what they want to do. Julia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I suppose I agree with you that there's always an article of faith when you put out parameters for a contest and you expect people to be telling the truth about who they are. As part of the application process, I could envision sort of a brief artist statement coming from them, because what they're going to do actually is not submit a finished work. They're going to submit a drawn sort of mock-up of what they plan to do. The reason for that is to make sure we don't create barriers to entry. Some people will say, well, you know, a lot of trouble to go to create an artwork, might not have been in the finals, it'll cost me money to make the artwork. So by creating that drawn proposal first, your jurors will be looking over a series of submitted mock-ups. You could also ask for that artist, if you wanted, you could ask for that artist statement to be done in a video that they submit through the website as well. I mean, you could, that way you get a feel for the artist, you hear their words, you hear how they express what they're trying to achieve in the art, and that can influence a juror too. So there's a few ways to handle it, but I think basic trust is a good starting point. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, my point was just because, working with the census, I've learned that it's not so obvious.
Oh, it's an excellent.
Yeah, so, and since, there's a prize involved, you can possibly expect people to want to enter regardless.
That's a good point, Jenny. Again, I like the idea of an artist statement. We're certainly, as evidenced here this evening, certainly in a technology world, they can, send in a little, video of themselves.
Typically, an artist statement is provided in written form, but I think for the younger generation, they're much more comfortable with just talking to a video and expressing themselves that way. So I think, and again, it lowers the barrier to participation. The person doesn't have to, be as formal with written. They can just sort of spontaneously get their point across, and that lets us see their emotion and their expressions and everything else too. So that I had considered that idea, but now that she's raised that question, I think, hey, that really strengthens the case for that. One thing I do want to stress in the document that's on the screen, and unfortunately it's impossible to see all the document at once, but how this came about really was as an historical museum, museums have to honor that historical record. And so generally they search for documentation, whether it's photographic, what the person looked like in photographs, or portraits that they may have sat for during their lifetime. I mean, these are sort of the gold standard for how you represent an historical figure. In Outlaw's case, you've got a really fascinating story. His entire life, I think, is a fascinating story, but zero documentation. And that makes it very hard to put up even the smallest exhibit, even just a painting hung next to a small wall text is impossible, because when you're doing a biographical exhibit, the visitors expect, a biographical likeness. So in this case, we thought, let's try to leave it to artists, up to the artistic imagination. In the parameters of the contest, I think we really want to emphasize that it's the entire man and his entire life that we're interested in conveying. I mean, everything about his life captures the tensions of his times, you know, from his conception to his Civil War service, the chaos of Reconstruction, and yes, his death as well. I mean, if you think of those tensions as a kind of earthquake fault, he straddled that fault his whole life. He represented those tensions, and we settled on the idea of African American artists because, as any curator will tell you, as any gallery owner will tell you, and any museum person will tell you, the best art always comes from a deeply felt place within the artist. And when you look at Wyatt Outlaw's life, every single stage of his life, it speaks to the historical experience of the ancestors of modern day Black Americans, whether it's what those ancestors went through with slavery or segregation or emancipation, or in this particular terrible instance, lynching. I mean, some of those modern day African Americans I refer to happen to be artists. And as an historical museum, I think the idea of capturing that depth of feeling and that continuity of experience is one of the things that allowed us to really entertain this sort of unconventional way to capture an image of an historical figure that we couldn't otherwise represent. So anyway, sorry, I went on a bit long there, but.
Thanks, Julie, appreciate it. Does that answer your question, Jennifer? Does that kind of,
Yes, I guess I was just wondering because that's the first thing that I thought about. I mean, and I mean, I also worked in law, so I just want to make sure that we're not entering something with discrimination or anything like that. So I just want to make sure that it's just something that
Right.
we look into, you know.
Yeah.
okay, good, thanks. And Jeanette.
Okay. That was, I'm glad you said discrimination, because it seems to me to only limit it to Black artists, you are discriminating, reverse discrimination. I run the Burlington Women's Club art show, and I would never be able to say only whites, only Blacks, only Hispanics. So I don't agree with it only being Black artists.
Okay, okay. Yes, Karen.
In my art background, I've run into the same thing with Jeanette. Now, there may be a way around it. That may be something that you want to take a look at so that it does focus with what you and Julia wanted, so that the predominantly provided artists or artisans with the work. But Jeanette, I simply, to be very honest with you, would not have brought that up, period.
Okay, okay. Well, and
But
I can,
Jeanette is absolutely correct. I've worked with Springfield Art Guild, Clifton Art Guild. I was a member of the Workhouse Arts in Lorton, and several other galleries. And
okay.
so
Well,
I see your
it's
point,
fairly-
and Jen, you know, do what you want. Maybe something that you want to maybe. I see the justification in this particular project, but what you may run into is Jeanette's. But by the same token, I would offer that if it's an oil painting and all you can do is it's an oil paint contest, so you irritate the watercolors. It is what it is. So,
well, that would be,
understand my
yeah, that would limit our, submissions.
But I'm saying, the watercolors could say, well, you're discriminating against other artists with other media. So it depends on how
It's
you
actually-
want to work with that. But I agree with Jeanette and with Jenny and with Julia that might have to be some water that we'll have to
Okay.
take a look at. For now, I think you ought to put that as something to look at, consider, and figure out how you want to handle.
That
And
can
so
certainly
on.
be a detail, left up in the air to decide it and discussed at a future date. I will say within the art world, within visual arts, within literature, it's extremely commonplace to have a gallery show or a museum exhibition very focused. I've seen contests before very focused on either only female artists, for example, or only Asian artists or Hispanic artists, for example. It happened. It's funny because now that you raise these points, I'm like, you know, have I ever seen it challenged? I haven't seen it challenged, but I understand your point, and it's something certainly worth discussing, you know, to decide in the future. But in the art world and in the literary world, it's pretty commonplace to have that very focused entry point, and at the exhibition level as well. But anyway, but thank you for asking it.
Good, thanks, Julia. Yeah, April.
My thought is that considering the way in which he was killed, that having an African American's perspective and having him memorialized would be advantageous if it was an African American person who put, you know, that came up, who African American people, we need to have a draw of African American people. And considering the way in which he died, I would think that Wyatt Outlaw would want an African American person to create the monument for him if he's going to be memorialized. I've been torn back and forth about the idea of a memorial of Wyatt Outlaw being put in a museum where there's a lot of that good old boy kind of flavor in there. And I thought that Wyatt Outlaw's likeness would be best in an African American museum where all people, well, an African American museum where people would really appreciate Wyatt Outlaw. Because, and I was talking with a friend earlier today that he needs to be memorialized wherever he can be memorialized. And the Graham Historic Museum, it's like, it could be a healing for the people. Because there's not a lot of African American people who care about that museum, who care about the Graham Historical Museum, because there is no representation of them. And you can understand why people would feel that way based on, it wasn't too long ago. We're still having rallies about Black Lives Matter and So Do Your Kids, and Confederate flags, and all of that stuff is downtown Graham. And I think it's very important that an African American person build that memorial for Wyatt Outlaw.
Thank you, April. Actually, I would just like to weigh in on what April is saying, because you actually hit the nail on the head, April. One of the things is we're not doing this, in my opinion, specifically just to be doing it. The fact of it is, this adds to the collection. Wyatt Outlaw was an enormous contributor and a very well-respected resident of Graham. And in our mission statement, it specifically says we have items and we show things to the historians, the history buffs, but we also have to show it to the residents of Graham, anybody that comes into the museum. And so I think that we are not representing the entire Graham community as it is now, just by virtue of the fact that we, as you well know, we are working with what was there for the most part. And what is not there is anything representing the Black community. This, I think, is an excellent springboard to getting the word out there and to make us more welcoming to Black visitors, to students, to anybody who comes through there, and may very well motivate and encourage others to say, I also have a story to tell, and to contribute to what we have in that historical museum. Are we going to be the same as an African-American cultural center? Well, of course not. But we are meant to tell the history of Graham. And this is an important component of it. And whether it's a sculpture or a painting or a tapestry, whatever it is, I think it I think it's an important step to take. And I've thought this for a long time.
Yeah.
I
And
would like
also
to-
oh, sorry.
I would like to, April, totally heart goes out to you. I
What-
do think that I'd written a list of African American prominent leaders that I've known in my lifetime in Graham, and I have the list right here. I think that I have given like numerous trips and talked to numerous kids, all nationalities, and there's a loss there. And I've said this for 20 years. There's a loss that I think that, like, when we have people pass away, we're like, okay, we're just gonna give that to the museum to get rid of it. And then it fills up with stuff from, the white people. And I think that there's a loss there of getting the documentations and stuff to represent the African-American community. I've said that for 20 some years. My grandfather was good friends with a guy named Coley Russell. He was the first depositor in Alamance Bank over here. My grandfather did work for him. He was totally debt-free. My grandpa said when he would do work for the man, he said, the sweetest man you ever met, he said, I would do work for him. And he said, Chuck, he said, as I would say, he said, well, how much I owe you, Earl? And he'd say, I would get back with you. And as he's walking away, he said, now, Earl, you're going to take the money right now. He did not owe anybody money in this town. And he would make my grandfather pay him before he would walk away from him. He was one of the largest building owners in the downtown, and he donated land to build a city park on, but yet the park is not named after him. So I sit there and I think, how fair is that? The kids that we're giving tours to, and they need to know that there's successful people that live within this community here, Graham, North Carolina, that when they go into a museum or whatever, they can see that they don't have to be a lawyer, attorney. Coley Russell was a plumber. He was a plumber. And the thing is, it was incredible, the stories that I learned from my grandfather was nothing but positive stuff. And in the 70s, I remember a guy named Jack O'Kelly. He was elected 4 times to the county commissioners here in Alamance County. And I remember my grandfather, my dad, my family, they could not say enough about Jack O'Kelly. But do we have stuff in the museum about Jack O'Kelly? Do we have enough of this stuff? And where do we go to find it at? We've got one of the only, I bet it's the only Black state senator that's from Graham, and it's Tony Forrest.
Yeah.
So what do we have? I don't know, I've been in a museum. What do we have that's his? So I just think there's this missing link right now. And when I got appointed to this, my goal is I wish my grandfather was alive because I could give you a list of people. I mean, the people that I know are the John Walkers that I donated and planted trees for out back in one of the businesses, because the whole time I've been down here, he would always come up and encourage me to keep moving forward and trying to save things down here. And he was a concrete contractor, worked at Western Electric for years with my dad. He was a concrete contractor. And then he also was a minister. And we actually went to his funeral. I was over here at one of the AME churches, but I couldn't say enough good stuff about him. So I feel like when you're going to walk somebody through the museum, okay, that there's not any type of balance there. I haven't seen it, and maybe I'm wrong, okay, because I can't go look right now. But I do think there's this missing link of prominent pillows, African-American men in this community, that these kids need to know that they can pattern their life after, and that there's been some great things that's been added to this community. It's not just one individual, there's multiple individuals.
Okay, Chuck, if I could interrupt you just a hot second. You are absolutely correct. Everything that you say, and I think anybody who has been, any of us who have been working in the museum over the past few years, this is this is nothing that we haven't come across, and which is why we're having this discussion, but we have to start somewhere. And we have an opportunity. Wyatt Outlaw is a very recognizable name. He is a man whose life has come up for discussion many, many times. And so this is our starting block, this art contest. And whether we open it to all artists or we do try to take African-American artists, Black artists only, we can decide that. But I do agree with April in that having a Black artist win this contest, and by the way, yes, there will be one winner, but there will be a lot of top 5 and top 10, and there will be an exhibit of these artists. They will have an opportunity to exhibit here locally. So at this moment, I don't want to get us too far off track here. We're talking about a Wyatt Outlaw project and a national competition. And Chuck, to your point about there's so many other people in Graham who have contributed from the African-American community, perhaps, and it's certainly been my hope, that offering a project of this type will stimulate and motivate others to come forward. And we can build on this, and we can expand on this concept all day long. It does have a beginning, middle, and end, but on the other hand, I hope you understand the enormous opportunity that this gives the museum to expand our collection, to incorporate all of the residents who contributed to Graham's history. That's what we're doing. And Chuck, and side note here, sidebar, but if you have stuff representing the African-American community, if you have stories, listen, we're all too happy to have it. You all know that. So at this moment, we'll just kind of keep on the path of the art contest and how you all feel about that, because I think that's the issue before us, and that's, I think, what we should be discussing.
If I could, if I could jump in 1 second.
Sure.
First off, I completely agree with Chuck. And as you know, you and I have discussed this Wyatt Outlaw proposal is one of several ideas we've discussed. It just happens to be the one that was readiest for presentation and also very timely because it's the 200th anniversary of his birth. But Elaine and I are also working on other ideas specifically to drive oral history material and personal family collection items to the museum, specifically to catch up and capture the lives of other African Americans in Graham, the ones that Chuck mentions, and give them the rightful place. You know, every historical museum has to honor its historical record. That is the entire point of an historical museum. So the fact that the current collection doesn't reflect to anyone's satisfaction the African American contributions to Graham is something to be remedied, and Elaine and I are discussing at least 2 other projects that would really add to that. They just weren't ready for presentation yet. I do think Wyatt Outlaw is a great starting point. I asked Elaine the other day, I said, if you stopped 100 people in the streets of Graham and asked them, who do you think is the most prominent African American historical figure from Graham, how many of those people would answer Wyatt Outlaw? And Elaine, I believe you're virtually all, maybe not every last one, but virtually all. So it's a great starting place, and he's so significant and his story is so unique. And while I would rarely advise any museum to do an art contest, the fact that there's no photographic or portrait record of him opens up that possibility. To April's point, I am in agreement that I think, as I said, the best art always comes from a really deeply felt place within the artist. And so I felt that, when you ask African-American artists to turn their artistic imagination to a subject like Wyatt Outlaw, you're capturing a depth of feeling and you're capturing a continuity of experience that a white artist would be unfair to a white artist. They wouldn't be coming from that same place, that same shared experience. But as Elaine pointed out, one of the important stages of this proposal is the exhibition of the winners. And I think that's a great moment to take up April's suggestion of finding the right location to showcase that work, however long that exhibition is up, be it a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever. I think that's a great stage where we can really take April's cues on how to do that the best we can. And then ultimately hang the work, the winning work at Graham's Museum to represent a sea change, to represent that commitment toward making the museum the collections more diverse, as is stated in Graham's mission. So I think it really keeps us on track. I understand the urgency in what Chuck is saying, and everybody here feels it. I can hear that when they talk, that they all feel it. But we have to take steps as we can, and this was in our readiness.
Yeah.
Elena, first
This is
step.
what we can do.
Yeah, at the moment.
Well, and interestingly enough, this has taken us months to develop. This is not something we thought of last week. And I said, oh, hey, man, we've got a meeting coming up in a week. So no, this was a very thoughtful and very detailed and design ready project that we came up with for the very reason that all of you have expressed, because this does take some thinking about, and it does take some organization. So
I think my frustrations about the project is that, we can't emphasize on the kids and the adults in Graham, North Carolina. And I think that's my frustration. And when you are talking about, going national or whatever you're talking about, it's their history here, and I think the emphasis should be on more of the local artists, and preferably from Graham, that would participate in this event. It could really change these kids or adults' lives to put them on a path of a better life.
Well, Chuck, if I may, let me just answer that point. Yes, that is extraordinarily important. However, in order to capture the widest amount of number of submissions and to give credence to this whole project and to make sure we get the best, we may very well have the winner come from, or the top 10 come from Graham. That would be lovely. But I think by only limiting to Graham, I think we may not get the type of entries that best serve what we're trying to do. So while we don't discount that whatsoever, please know that even though it's a nationwide contest, that just opens it up to even more people's interpretation of the law, the life of Wyatt Outlaw, of which we will be sending links for research. And we don't want this just to reflect the end of his life.
Yeah.
They've done that here in Graham, and it was not a success. Believe me when I tell you. So this is designed to capture the essence of his life, which is what this is really all about. So if you're talking about impacting the kids and the students and all this, what better way than to show how he lived?
Yeah, I have something to say. As a black man who is going to be thinking in his mind, painting Wyatt Outlaw, he's gonna know about his life. He's gonna know about, if he's researching his life, and he's gonna know about his death. And unfortunately for a black man to paint a painting of Wyatt Outlaw, he's still thinking now that Black Lives Matter, that black men are still being killed, that he's painting, yes, to memorialize Wyatt Outlaw. But at the same time, in his mind, he's thinking that could be me. So it could be, excuse my language, y'all, but for an artist, a man, it could be a mind fuck.
That's tough.
We all understand that. Yes, Jeanette, go ahead.
Answer, April, back several minutes ago. I can see where you're coming from, but I personally am getting kind of tired of being told that I don't understand and I can't feel and I don't understand. So, once again, I don't agree with it just being Black artists. So I think it should be open to everybody. So
Okay, would you, let me ask you this, Jeanette, would you be, are you against the concept completely?
of this show
With the contest, the,
contest. Oh, no, I'm not against the contest, but I'm with, he had a very long, I mean, not long maybe, but a productive life. He was an important person, and I'm afraid people are only going to see his death, how he died, his death. And they're not going to research or do any research into his life and how he lived and the roles he played. I think only people are only going to see his death, especially right now in this day and time with Black Lives Matter. So,
Actually, part of what we've discussed about, like what the jury will do to come up with parameters for art entries, I think part of what they want to do is to emphasize that, you know, you in creating parameters for an art contest, you create a sense of what the jury is looking for, and you emphasize. In this case, you can emphasize, hey, this was a man who lived an amazing life. There's so much to be said about what he stood for and who he was, and some of it's still so mysterious because there's not a terrific historical record about him. But I think you can really make it clear in the parameters of the contest, along with, as Elaine said, the historical links we will include on the website. The way this information will come to potential artists, potential entrants, is there'll be a website that has links describing his life, very clear information from the jury about how we're looking to represent him. You know, I think it's all really doable in that way. And I don't think we'll get work after work after work that just represents the last moments of his life. I understand from Elaine that there had been a local exhibit at one point that wanted works, but didn't stress those parameters. And it got a lot of works that stressed those last moments of his life. We're not barring the artists from treating the last moments of his life, but we're making it clear to the artists that the jury wants the full picture, the full man. And that's important. And then to Chuck's point, I agree that winning this contest, even one of the lesser prizes, I think just being recognized as an artist for this contest could be life-changing for any young kid in Graham. And I think, Elaine, it would make sense to talk about maybe some special support we could offer to the local community, to young artists, to sort of really back them up and really, you know, encourage them to enter, and, you know, whether it takes meeting with them or any special training, happy to do that, to add it to it, to really get out to the local artists so we get the best representation we can.
and I think, Julia, early on at one point, you and I even talked about a student component in terms of younger students and that sort of thing. Well, it didn't quite make the cut on this, but that is certainly something we can do. Right. Because the goal here, everybody, is that to be very inclusive. You know, we can, the goal is to tell the story of this remarkable man through art that reflects on the history of Graham. Let us not forget, we're trying to talk about the history of Graham, of which he is an enormous figure in this town. So that,
in a way, when you think of that complete historical record, it's almost impossible not to represent him in the museum. But because there's no photographic record or portraiture, we came up with the art competition as the way to remedy that.
Can I piggyback on that for a second?
Yeah, of course.
I'm actually very excited about the fact that it's national, because about 2-3 months ago, I'm always, I mean, I love history, and I've been fascinated by the history of Wyatt for years now. And I was searching on YouTube and I found the most amazing video from somebody that's from somewhere not even close to North Carolina. And he did an amazing report on how the Klan started and so much history on the Kirk-Haldane War. And I learned more from that video than I have learned from the books that have come out of Graham. So I think that opening this up is going to bring us the opportunity to learn from others that can teach us what we want to know.
That's, Jenny, that's a really good point. That's actually what my hope has been, is get it out there and open that door. That's,
I think it also shows a benevolence on Graham's part to reach out across an artistic population from coast to coast to help us think through it.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking
good
of the
point.
space issue with what Julia just said. I would like to see someplace exterior to the museum, a wall that had a rotating exhibit, that it was the Lee Outlaw Memorial, put whatever name with it. And some of these pieces of artwork could be placed there for a 2-month or 3-month exhibit. And
yeah, that's the
once a
plan,
quarter
Karen.
or once a year, it ends up being a high school, junior high mashup between a history lesson and an art lesson.
Mhm. That's
I
actually,
spent 10 years as a middle school art teacher, and I ended up getting things, written things and history things that I had the history teachers and English teachers saying, Karen, how are you getting this stuff out here? And it's just what Julia said. We pitched the assignment, the kids kicked it around, and it came from their arts, and there it is. So that would be a follow-on, but I do think we do need to use this as a start, and I totally agree with April that the winning entry must be an African American artist. And if you did do an outlaw permanent wall with rotating exhibit, the original piece should reside in the museum with a very good quality copy placed there with how that particular Lee Outlaw Memorial Gallery, or whatever term you come up with, how it came to be, that it was part of Graham Historical Museum's effort to get the word out. In fact, it was so important to get the word out that they actually even left their building and put the word in another building. So perhaps people like Melody and Brian and you folks who know the campus in the city, there might be a wall somewhere. I can think of one location, that a building that was built in Virginia Beach that had 6 floors, and as you came off the elevator, on both sides of the elevator and on the walls across, it was carpeted. And the guy said, it's here because it's going to be a rotating exhibit. So, you take an exhibit, you end up with a lot of holes in the walls once you change things. But it was some kind of a surface that was nailable. So any nail or any hanging mechanism that went into that surface was, it's kind of self-sealed. And it was a nice, almost like an outdoor carpet, but it was very, very good quality. So I
listening to this, Brian.
we start with that.
Brian's patching holes in the wall.
I have a few questions for April, because like we all can't relate to her community and the things that they go through. And you had said that, and you make me think when you say this, that that where will your community go to best look at this anyway? I mean, down the road. I mean, I don't even think there's an African American Culture Center or museum in Alamance County. And so you said that the best suited place for people to see it. And where do you think that is what I want to know.
Can I jump in here just a second? April, think about that for a minute. I'm sorry, Chuck, but here's my question to this. So based on your question, So you do not think, or it sounds like you don't think that this art contest, whatever that bears, whatever fruit that bears, you don't want this in the museum? Is that what you're talking?
You don't put words in my mouth.
No, I'm asking you the
I'm
question,
asking
John.
her a question because it doesn't matter what I think. And as far as the museum goes, I'm okay, but I want to know what she thinks because it doesn't do any good if the right people don't see this. And I want to know what she thinks because she emphasized on this a while ago. And I think it's important that what is the purpose of doing something if it's not going to impact the people it needs to impact the most? That's my question. And only she would know that answer and I wouldn't. And so I just wanted to see what she.
Angel, is there a location someplace in town? If you could walk into Graham downtown, where would be the one place that you would say, I'd like to have this wall or a room in this building or
Oh, you mean,
floor in this building?
you know where I've always wondered where was the actual place that Wyatt Outlaw was hung?
That's the Centennial Park.
It was close to where the bell is right now.
Where the bell is.
I've heard
And I thought that part.
two different stories. It was on Court Square and it was where Sesquicentennial Park is. So
Karen Troxler from Elon College was the historian that we had for years. She had said on numerous times we had talked with her, and it was where they had the county fair, and the county fair wasn't on Court Square. It was off the west 100 block of Elm Street, and there was a lot of trees back there. It was behind where like the Alamance News is at. And there's two reports that actually say sort of like the same thing, and everybody's always wondered. But that's actually the location that Karen Troxler felt and a lot of other people have.
I've read a lot of different things too. Like the guy that built my house was the guy that started the Gleaner, and he apparently claims he's the only one that saw it, and that's where he says he saw it. I mean, so I don't know.
Where, Jenny?
Kind of
Where?
like where the Centennial Park is, but it was a little different in the back, kind of like that alley, but that was
Okay.
very different before. His
Okay.
office was where the he used to have a law office, Captain Parker, and it was kind of like where the physical therapy is right now.
Oh, okay.
So he was sitting in the back of the office and he saw it happening somehow from the back.
Where was his office at?
Where I guess what's that building they call it, where they had the where the physical therapy is. How do they call that building now? They have the Patterson
building.
Yeah, that one.
Well,
In the back. He used to have a law office there. The buildings used to be different.
Okay, so I sat down 20 some years ago, an article hit the paper, and I had a guy from the round table of the Civil War come and sit with me from Raleigh, and he wanted to clarify stuff. And so my second authenticity of the thing came from his mouth. And he said that the documentations that they had in Raleigh said it was still the West Elm Street area south of West Elm Street. They didn't say there was a park there. That's what or the fair was there. That's what Cal Troxler said. And so his job, he said, was to make sure that the Civil War and his history did not get deviated from where it was supposed to be. Regardless, it wasn't a good act. But the fact is, that's what he said also. So that's my two sources. We can later see a lot of different things on the internet, but when you've got somebody that sits on the historical roundtable of the Civil War and he comes into town and talks about it, and that's why I feel like that his information is probably the most accurate.
Okay, listen, thank you everybody for weighing in. I appreciate it a lot. Again, this is such an enormous topic, just the basics of it. I think we're scooting off the idea of the contest. Is everybody pretty clear about what this contest is and what this proposal outlines in terms of the contest? I really want to make sure that we decide on this. Does anybody have any other questions or anything?
Yeah, so my question is like, you've got to raise like quite a bit of money, and what is or who is the 501c3? Is the museum a 501c3? Because it's going to be hard to raise money for this event if these businesses can't get the shelter from their taxes of being a 501c3. So
Okay,
Is it realistic? That's what I'm trying to ask.
yes, it absolutely is realistic. Melody, you have talked a bit with Frankie and everything, and the funds will be channeled through the city. And it's my understanding, Melody, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that the city will be issuing tax deductible letters where these contributions can be deducted. Is that correct, Melody? Do I have that right?
It is correct. It will run through the city budget. It will be just like any other project. Brian will have a staff person responsible for this that will report back to this board routinely every meeting. Most of the fundraising efforts are going to be done by Eyeline. That doesn't mean that we won't have local. We hope that we certainly do. Some of the original money is local, and they can write the checks to the city of Graham. The city of Graham will write them in turn a letter, and that will be part of the Parks and Rec staff. Or Brian, I guess if we have someone on the museum that wants to do that, that we keep track of it that way. But there will be letters written to assure people that their funds have been received. The city has done things like that for many years.
Thanks, Mel. So does that answer your question then, Chuck? If
I just
anybody
didn't-
else had the same concerns?
I didn't know if this Eyeline was a 501c3 or who was a 501c3 because I've been
No,
involved in
Eyeline
Eyeline.
certainly is not. No, they are not. They are a consulting firm, just as the proposal indicates, and there's a bio for everyone, for the team on Eyeline. So yeah, it's definitely not a 501c3. Anybody else have any questions? Julia, is there anything that we've missed that you feel is important for the group to know?
I think we've covered most everything, and I think it's been a really thoughtful discussion of
Good, thank you.
relevant topics. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you, everybody, for considering. If nobody has any other discussion or questions, I would like to call for a motion to go ahead and accept the proposal as it is, or do you have changes in it that you want that can be put in there for inclusion? Is there a motion to accept the proposal as written? Anybody? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw somebody raise their hand. So is there a motion to deny this proposal? Gotta have something. Do you want to make a motion with changes to be considered?
Elaine, can I suggest, like, I'll make a motion to accept the proposal as written? And put it to a
Absolutely.
vote?
Thank you, Nikki. Is there a second?
That's a second.
Thank you. That was Jenny. Was that Jenny or?
Yep,
Who
that was
sec-
me.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Sorry. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
No.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Elaine,
Oh,
you
we-
can't do it that way. You're going to need to do it individually and call on.
Oh,
each
that's
member
right.
Individually to be able to do that. Okay.
That's true. Yes, I do have to poll the group.
Right.
So thanks, Mel. So April, yes or no?
Yay.
Okay, thank you. Nikki?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Jeanette? You'll have to give us a verbal. No, okay. Karen?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yay.
Chuck?
No.
And I vote yay on yes. So we have what, 5 yeses and 2 nos? Is that correct? Then the motion passes. And am I good with that, Melody, for the virtual? Is that all I need is the polling?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, good. All right, thank you one and all. I know this has been kind of a a long drawn out thing, but I appreciate it. And Julia and I will get started on this, and we will keep you in the loop every step of the way. You'll probably get sick of hearing from me. So, but it's important that you understand what's going on and what your role will be in this project. So Julia, anything from you?
Yeah, well, first off, appreciation, for the support of the proposal. Also, just a specific request to Chuck, if you would write up some notes on you have some special recollection and special connections to people who've talked about
Right.
other prominent African Americans in Graham's history, and
I'd love
and
to.
Elaine and I would like to incorporate that into our discussions, and sort of, she had mentioned Coley
Russell.
Coley
Russell.
Russell.
She'd
Correct.
mentioned Coley Russell, but you mentioned quite a few others, and so we,
That's correct.
whether it's reaching out to descendants of those families and trying to get artifacts, well, because you can lose all that stuff in a heartbeat. One person goes and things get, personal effects get carried away, and you lose that record forever. And
I'm more than willing to do that. I talked with my uncle last night, which is a historian, and he totally remembers Jacko Kelly. He was his friend. So I should be able to get good stories about him. I just remember in the 70s, at the age I was, that our family was just like overwhelmed. And my grandpa, I always say how great of a man he was. He died at an early age, but he was incredible. That the county, everybody, I don't know of anybody back then that even had, what I remember, the excitement just being around him. So,
well, please include contact numbers, the historian names, any living person we can reach to talk about these people. Oral history is a great area of interest for Elaine and for us, and we think it's a terrific way to bring a lot into the collection. And you can't move too quickly when it comes to oral history, because you lose elders and memories every single day that goes by. So not to put pressure on you, Chuck, but the sooner you can get that to us.
Yeah, but get started tonight, would you? And actually, and Julia, you wouldn't know this, but April and I, for the longest time, were working on oral histories and interviews from the folks. And this would be a tremendous, April, this is a great segue into what we were doing.
I almost was like, well, must not be meant to be.
Yeah, no, I thought that too, but it's such an ongoing process. So Chuck, I think Julia's request is absolutely dead on. So if you could
I'd love to
keep stuff and funnel stuff to me, and then I will make sure that we all get it. And this can truly be a group effort. So thank you all very much.
One more thing I'd like to say, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but when Alex Haley wrote the book Roots and played the movie, if you'll go to the back of the book and look in his footnotes, you'll see where it says Dr. Goley. The Underground Railroad went through Graham, and Dr. Goley doctored him, not the senior Dr. Goley. Okay, I had the opportunity to meet his granddaughter, which is, like probably in her mid to late 60s last month. So the thing is, it's like a lot of that stuff, it's just unfortunate that we're, I feel bad for April's community, because a lot of that stuff is lost, and these kids need to know that this is out there for them. It's some good stuff out there, and so by all means, I'm going to work on this. Okay, I promise.
Thank you, Chuck. We appreciate it.
You've been an inspiration tonight to me, just by the names that you rolled off, and you have those contacts. Would be a big
yeah, this is huge.
help to the museum.
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Good.
And Chuck,
yes,
I just wanted to know where did your no come from? Was it because you wanted to be a local endeavor of African American artists from the Graham area?
I think that over the years, my grandfather, the way we were raised, I have so many good stories about my grandfather and our experience with the African American community. I mean, I remember, it's just my family in general. And like, I remember, and I'll tell a quick story. This just says the outlook of our family. I only seen my grandfather cry or pass tears 2 times in my life. The first time when his wife passed away, and she was the age of 55, my grandmother. And the second time was a gentleman by the name of Dempsey Graves, which my grandfather taught to lay brick. And my grandfather, it's like his son came in a couple years ago and said, you know, had your grandfather not taught my dad the trade, we would probably not eat. And I can remember as a kid us going to Dempsey's house and picking him up and taking him to the job site so he could work. And my grandfather paid him as a brick mason. So I just think that it's just a lot of good stuff here. And I think us being in a labor trade for all those years, that we built a lot of good friendships and relationships. And a lot of it comes from stories from my grandfather and our family. So I just think that, you know, when I talk to a group of high school students and I go to tell them that they are our future, by death, they will rule our community sooner or later. We're all going to pass away. And let them know that there's opportunities there and the things that I've been taught to pass on to them. That is my frustration. Is like, they need to know that there's people that in their community have been successful. I mean, when they go onto the park or they go somewhere and it says this building was once owned by Coley Rich, you know, and a little bit of its history or a plaque near that, then maybe only one kid sees it. But the fact is, they need to know that that's there for them. And so I just think
Chuck.
that we need to work on. So, and I'd be glad, April, to sit down and talk to you anytime, and I can tell you what stories I've been told and what I know.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
but-
April, I'm sorry, did you have something else on?
I was just wondering why you were a no vote for the proposal.
Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest thing is things that I don't understand is like the taxpayers' dollars, you know, is it fair for it to be used abroad?
Chuck, wait a minute.
Stuff like that.
If that's your, Chuck, if that's your question, I'm happy to answer that for you. This
Yeah.
is not this is not funded by taxpayer dollars. Which,
I
and
thought
it
the
clearly,
seed money was coming from the city.
No. If you'll read the proposal and read everything that's been written, this is funded through corporate donations and private. And there is a small amount of
So that
seed
was my
money.
fault.
There's a small amount of seed money that we need to get started, but actually at this moment, more than half of that has already been raised and
Right.
pledged. So, and anything that the city pays out in seed money at this moment will be reimbursed back to the city because it actually comes from the museum budget. So it will be paid back through when the fundraising begins. So
And
this is in
the
no
other-
way taxpayer funded.
Okay, that's fine, Elaine. And the other thing is I just was really going to be the emphasis on educating our local kids. I mean, I meet with them at least, I didn't get to meet with them this year, but I get to sit in a room and talk to these kids every year. They bring me a group of about 20 kids. And I've been invited here lately to go to the AME churches and talk to kids that are in single family situations. And so it's things that's on my heart and I'm going to do because they need to know what this great country has to offer them. And,
Okay.
you know, we're really not taught that stuff. So that's why. And I mean, the main thing is I just like the local kids.
Chuck, I think you're going to really love the further ideas that Elaine and I developed. We'll share them with you as soon as we can, but they go straight to the heart of high school kids in Graham, capturing the memories of elders in Graham, and bolstering the diversity of the museum's collection as well. They really touch on all the points you care about. So I think you're going to be really pleased when those are ready, and we'll try to get them ready for you as soon as possible. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all for you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments as I'd like to move on so we're not here half the night. But I don't want to diminish if you have any, if you're not clear on anything. It's important that you are. Okay, good. Then the next item on the agenda is the marketing. Jeff, can you put up the second screenshot for me?
Was that the one of the fire truck?
Yes, please. While Jeff is getting that up, let me just tell you, the Historical Museum was offered an opportunity to purchase ad space for Our State magazine. And it's a cooperative effort with the Alamance Visitors Bureau. And so I submitted 3 photos and a descriptive text. So anybody that wanted to do this, that was the parameters. So I did that, and we will in fact have an ad appearing in our state magazine in the November issue. And this is the mock-up. This is what it will look like. So I think it drops in October and it will be in the November issue. So everything gets kind of geared toward holiday. So I hope you guys all like it, but that's kind of big stuff for us here at the museum. And if you don't already subscribe to Our State, please pick up a copy at your local newsstand. So anybody have any questions on that?
Can I say one thing that is
Sure.
it's regarding the fire truck moving? It opens up a good opportunity to actually have some type of social gathering because the fire truck will be gone for 2 weeks. It's I don't know if it's a
Yeah.
COVID thing, but
So what, you're the party planner now, are you?
Yeah, you could have a party in there or something, or throw some
Listen,
type of hors d'oeuvres or something, you know. So it's
ask
an
Brian
opportunity.
ask Brian how many times I wanted to move that fire truck out. I don't think the word party was used, but nonetheless.
Well, I think it's a good opportunity for us to have that 2-week window, but I like the fire truck there because I think kids are drawn to it. So.
Well, they are. You're absolutely right. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Thanks for that, Jeff. Does anybody have any questions on the ad, on the marketing portion of our? Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad.
4 weeks.
I'm sorry.
We'll be gone for 4 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after. Yeah. So, you know, come on, let's start putting our party hats on and our party planner heads together. The next thing on the agenda is acquisitions. Now, I have several things set aside in custody at the museum, primarily from Jerry Cummings, Jerry Cummings, that are military. But because we're not meeting in person, obviously we cannot do this now. So we will do acquisitions and we will have that at our next meeting. For those of you who are new to the board, the museum board also serves as the acquisition and accession committee for the museum. So all the artifacts that come to us for consideration as either a contribution or on loan comes through the acquisition committee, and we do this at every meeting if we have stuff. So since we haven't met since February of 2020, we cannot do anything in person, but we determine whether to accept or decline based on what we all see as a group. We don't authenticate artifacts, but very often there's distinguishing marks or manufacturer information and stuff where we can do a spot research and then kind of decide whether to accept or deny. So something to look forward to at the next meeting. But at this moment, we do have artifacts, but we cannot work on them now. I have a couple of quick announcements, and then I'm going to go to the staff and city council liaison reports. The 2.5 phase for the governor is in effect now for the COVID-19 restrictions, which means we will be reopening the museum on September 25th and the 26th, Friday and Saturday. So, which is great news. I'll have our regular hours, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And there will be safety precautions in place. Masks will be required. We will have hand sanitizer like every 3 feet. Just kidding. But we will require visitors to wear masks. We will only allow a number of visitors in at any one time in order to protect ourselves and other visitors. So what I'd like to do at this moment, well, if you are interested in serving as a docent on that Friday or Saturday, please contact me. And then I will be setting up the docent schedule like I normally do on a monthly basis. And we'll work from there. But my first priority is to set up the Friday and Saturday, the 25th and the 26th from 10 to 2. So if you're interested in serving as a docent, please just let me know, shoot me an email. That would be great. Secondly, I'm pleased to announce, more than you know, that we are going to be, and Brian, tell me if this is no longer the case, but last time we talked, our October meeting will be at the museum. They're going to be able to social distance, mask, everything, but we will not have to do all of this. And we will get to meet in person at the museum for the October 26th meeting. It will be at 6:30, second floor of the museum, as always, around the big conference room table. So that's exciting, I think. Anybody have any questions about either of those items? Okay, report. Brian, you want to give your staff report, please?
Yes, ma'am. We, unbeknownst to you guys, we had some mold issues that were found while we've been away on hiatus. And those issues have been remedied. Sheetrock has been replaced, painting has been redone, and museum is back together. I think, Elaine, 100% back together is probably not quite accurate. I don't think.
99.5.
I'll take it.
Yeah, me
And,
too.
So there's a few things here and there. I've got some painting, touch-up painting to do and that sort of thing, but that's nothing to do with the mold remediation that was done. But the museum is a safe environment now for you guys to be here, for my staff to be here, and most importantly, the visitors that come to see us. A couple of books have started trickling in. Elaine alluded to that earlier. One book is Iron Confederacies, Southern Railways, Klan Violence and Reconstruction by Scott Renner Nelson. And the second one was A People at War, Civilians and Soldiers in America's Civil War by Scott Reynolds Nelson and Carol Sheriff. So those two have come in and will be added to the library. There are several other books such as Auction and Action, Shuttle and Plow, the kind of hyper local books that are sold at our Alamance County Historical Museum that I reached out to Dr. Vincent. It's been a week or so ago now, I believe. And I'm going to attempt to purchase those books from the Historical Museum so we can, Jeanette, you're shaking your head.
They're at Friends of the Library book sale, $3 right
Okay.
now.
That's why that's why this is out there, because
Give me the list. Give me the list.
okay. So I'll work with Jeanette on tracking down some of those books. And again, that was going to be, there are many, many, many others that are not readily available at the museum that I'll send out to you guys that we've put together. And I'm sure they're in collection somewhere or available at a Friends of the Library sale. So I think the Auction and Action will be one that's more difficult to find than most. Jeanette or Chuck, you guys may know a little bit more about that one than I do. We do have the manuscript that Mr. Stokes used, and Elaine is displaying that. So we can, I think that's a big get for the museum. Yep, I need one of those, Chuck.
I'm trying to find you another one.
Good luck.
We have a signed copy.
You have one, Jeanette?
I've got
Okay, awesome.
done.
So that's the type of thing that you guys are great for, is to kind of pull those resources together. So those are the small things that we're working on. Exhibits are always kind of in flux. We're always doing a little something downstairs in the museum, and trying to polish it just a little bit more. So that's all I've got right now.
Good, thanks, Brian. Speaking of polishing things up, Karen and I have been working on making new descriptor labels for the artifacts and to put up on the wall. Won't stick to the wall, I swear. Sort of like the nail holes. But anyway, they look fabulous. Karen has really done, I will say, the yeoman's share of this work. And so we've got a lot of labels. We'll be getting them up in the next few weeks. It's going to be an ongoing process. So bear with us, but they will look very nice. Some of them will be tent cards. Some of them will be on the wall next to the exhibit. I guess you can't see it. Anyway, so thank you, Karen, for that. It's hours of work. Okay, Melody, City Council.
Yes, Elaine, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
All right, great. So we've done a lot of work over the last several months, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would be for the museum board that would be helpful to you tonight. If there is anything, Obviously, there are things that I still cannot discuss. But if you think of anything and have questions for me, I would be happy to try to answer any questions that you have. Let me say this, however, I could not be more proud than each and every one of you tonight coming together as a group for the betterment of the city of Graham. This is a tremendous board. You've done tremendous work in the past. You are continuing to do that. What is exciting are new people, new ideas. And the beauty of it is I have a little sneak preview about the potential for projects in the future. And you are all saying all the right things, moving us in the right direction that we are already looking at. And it's very, very exciting. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the city council. What tremendous job you are doing. Keep it up, guys. You're doing a beautiful job and we truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Mel. Let me just mention a couple of things. A group of this type would not run without the help of these two people. I promise you. The reason the museum looks as good as it does in many ways is because Brian lifts and pulls and tugs and climbs and, you know, takes time out of an already busy schedule to help. Melody has been invaluable in terms of her guidance and her support in helping this run the way it's supposed to, and certainly has been a great resource for me. So I personally thank you for that, Melody. But as a group, we couldn't have better representation in the city. So to both of you, we thank you as well. Anything else, guys, for either of you have questions for Melody or Brian? Okay. The last thing on our list is items not on the agenda. And Jeff, I don't know if you've got people waiting on board to say anything or ask questions, but at this time they can do that. And do you have anybody, Jeff?
Not at this time. If you would like to read that, or at least part of that snip that I sent you about hitting *9 and raising your hand.
Right. If anyone in attendance would like to speak during this agenda item, please indicate that you wish to do so by using the raise the hand feature in Zoom, or if by phone, press 9 to notify the host you wish to speak. We will recognize you at the appropriate time to speak, which would be now. If you're having technical difficulties, please contact Preston Jenkins at 336-347-8674 to provide your comments to be read. So if anybody pops on here in the next 3 seconds, I don't know.
As of right now, there's nobody with their hands raised. There's only 3 attendees right this second.
That's splendid. Well, we want to give them an opportunity to speak. If they haven't done so by now, I'm assuming they will not. Anything from the rest of you? Do any of you have anything not on the agenda? Yes, Mel.
Elaine, if I may.
Sure.
These Zoom meetings take a tremendous amount of time and work and effort. We have a tremendous IT staff in Jeff Wilson and in Preston, and they do a tremendous job. You can see that they are all working late at night. There are numerous Zoom meetings going on right now. These guys are working night and day to help provide these things. So we want to publicly say thank you to Jeff and his staff and to Preston for making this possible, because without them, we wouldn't be meeting, and we really appreciate them.
Completely agreed, Melody. And Jeff, thank you. Jeff has been really very nice at kind of walking me through this and doing a bit of hand holding. So Melody, thank you for bringing that up. We do thank you both, Jeff and Preston. So anything else, guys? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, April. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes or no. Nikki? Jeanette?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It's unanimous. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.